Thank you so much for tuning in to Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood.
Welcome back to Mom Jeans, the podcast. We are your hosts. I am Lisa, girl mom to 2 girls.
And I'm Danielle, a boy mom and pregnant. And still a military spouse for a few more months. But
yeah. And you will be a boy mom to 2 boys.
My life is about to be crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk, I'm fascinated by the stay-at-home mom world. So I wanted to talk to Danielle about quite a few things actually that come with being a stay-at-home mom, and kind of ask her experience with it. And I know we've talked about it in the past, but maybe a recap on how you decided you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and what the game plan is for now, right? Game plans can always change, of how long stay-at-home mom life will go on for you as plans are right now.
Okay. Well, I didn't always think that I'd be a stay-at-home mom. I was a PE teacher for 10 years, PE and health. And then after I had Weston, I had him at the perfect time because I was able to finish out the school year and then have the summer. So I had about like 6 months with him. But the closer I got going back to the school year, the more anxious that I felt. And so I was like, and I'm sure that, that it's a normal feeling, people I've talked to all women, women who go back and women who don't, or moms who don't. And, but yeah, the closer I felt more anxiety about it. I just remember talking to Ryan about it. I'm religious, so I prayed about it a lot. And then just listen to some podcasts of like stay-at-home mom, trying to like get a better understanding of what that looks like and why people decide to stay home, and then why people decide not to stay home. So I came across a podcast, Suzanne Ranker, I think was her name, and she just kind of talks about like a little bit about like the myths of daycare and like why moms do want to stay home, and I think that really helped me. And I'm not saying that's like true for everybody, but for me it resonated. And so excuse me. And so that's kind of when it like hit the I can't even talk, hit the head on the nail. And so I think that's right. And then kind of I sat with that, and so I decided not to go back. I decided after we already signed contracts, so I had to pay money to get out of my contracts. Teachers don't even make that much. And then also PE teachers are easy to find because there's a lot of us and not a lot of jobs. And so they're like, oh, we have to spend time and money to find a replacement for you. And I'm like, it's not going to be that hard. But I had to pay about $3,000 to get out of my contract.
That's so much money.
Yeah, so much money. I was so mad, but it's like, whatever. And then when I finally did decide, though, I just felt like a sense of peace and calm with that. And I was excited that I was going to get to stay home with my son and, have that extra, time with him. Because for me, working as a teacher, I'm with other kids for 8 hours a day. And then, you have after school activities. Some people coach. I wasn't coaching at the time, but I used to coach. And I was like, I'm really only going to get maybe a solid 2 to 3 hours every night with him. And I'm going to like pay someone else to watch my kid for 8 hours. And that just made me sad. And again, I'm not, what I say why I stayed home to be a stay-at-home mom, I don't want it to make anyone else out there listening to this feel bad. It's just the decision that I felt like I had to make for our family. But
absolutely. So while you were pregnant, was there ever a time where you and Ryan had talked about you staying at home?
No, not really. I mean, he said he did tell me if I did decide. Excuse me. I need to get my water. Okay, we can cut that. We talked about it, and he said if I did decide to, like, if I wanted to stay home, that we could have that conversation. He's like, this would be the time because we're going to move here in a couple of years, and so you could try it out. And I was like, no, I want to go back to work. So we 3 months pregnant, we had already like secured a daycare position for him, and I liked it, and I was like, this will be great, and so he was all set up and everything. So
Wow.
we were really planning on me going back to work.
That's interesting. So you said he was probably what, like 4 or 5 months when you finally decided that you were going to stay home with him?
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
think it
then,
was like July, August timeframe, right before school went back.
oh wow.
So,
And did you
yeah.
have any penalties for backing out of daycare?
No.
Oh,
No.
good. That's
Yeah.
good. So then did you, like, you listen to podcasts, but did you look into like anything specifically, like if there were any groups around you that were like stay-at-home mom support, like we're on base?
I tried to find something like that, and I had a hard time. I actually didn't find this stay-at-home community of moms on base until after.
Okay.
But yeah, up until then, I read one book too by a daycare worker, and I can't remember the book what it was called, but and she kind of wrote. She worked at a really good daycare, like one of the top ones that people like spend a lot of money for their kids to go to, and still kind of talked about like the different like flaws of daycare. And I guess that like scared me. But I was like, oh gosh. Not that there's anything wrong with daycare, but it's just like it made a lot of sense to me. And so I did read a book, but other that than podcasts and like that book, that was really, and then my mom intuition or like my mom feeling,
Yeah.
that's kind of what it went on.
That's so
So,
interesting that you say that, because I remember Hannah had gotten into a different daycare. Like, we were the first daycare we were at, we basically didn't have any options, and there was a wait list, and we didn't know that, and we didn't get her on any lists until she was already born. And then we got into this daycare, and I felt horrible. Like, I broken record here. I had postpartum depression, and I had the same anxiety. As I was like, I shouldn't go back to school or to work. And Brandon's like, you don't have to go back if you don't want to. And I'm like, no, it's probably good for me to get out of the house. Like, I'm going crazy in the house. But we got her into this daycare, and I hated it. I hated it. I thought it was
mm,
horrible. Like, they didn't treat her right. Like, all these things. Like, she was a sleeping baby. Like, she slept most of the time she was at daycare. Like, they had logs, and they would give us logs of what she ate and slept and all that kind of stuff. But then we moved daycares eventually. Like, at a year and a half, she
mhm.
moved to a different daycare, because that's when they started taking them. And then she was like going through the system, like getting older. And then Aubrey had to go to a daycare, and we took her back to the daycare that Hannah was in, because that was the only daycare we could get into. And I remember one of the teachers at Hannah's school was like, I can't believe you would bring her back to that daycare. It's so horrible. I worked there for 6 weeks. It's the shortest job I've ever had. They treat the
Oh
kids
no.
horribly, like all these things. And I'm like, mouth wide open. I'm like, okay, but listen, like, we live in a town where there's no options.
Yeah.
I really don't know what to do. I need to keep my job, but also, like, I've had a much better experience the second time around with Aubrey, and like knowing what to expect and all that kind of stuff. But it's still like hearing it from somebody who worked at that daycare, you were like, oh boy, like,
Right.
it's such a bad mom feeling of like, oh, should I do the stay-at-home mom life? And we love where they're at now, and their daycare's incredible. It's so great. But that's a great point. And like, if you read a book from somebody who's worked in that industry, and they're like, I'd second guess that. Oh my gosh, am I making the right
Yeah.
decision? That's crazy.
I know, it's so hard. And like and it's sad to me when people do want to stay home with their kids and they can't, like for maybe financial reasons or something of that sort. And
Right.
that's why I liked listening to Suzanne Ranker. I think I might be saying that right. She
Hmm.
also has podcast episodes about like how to talk to your spouse if you want to stay home, which I didn't have that issue there. Like Ryan was on board. But
Awesome.
then also it talks about like how to um about your like finances, like how to go through your finances and kind of decide if you
Oh,
can afford to stay home, because a lot of people have that misconception. If you have 2 to 3 kids in daycare, like you know some people are like only working to pay for daycare, or like
yes.
they're spending more like than their means. on
Mm-hmm.
daycare. And so sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense for their partner to stay, like one of the caregivers to stay home, if that's something that they want to do. And then I understand, like in your situation, you definitely just, you like to go to work and like that, like,
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome. But
my what I make just covers daycare. So I'm
yeah,
literally like breaking even, but it's for my sanity.
yeah,
And I do so so obviously have a second kid on the way, and you are going to stay home obviously with both of them. Is that like intimidating to you, scary to you? Are you like up for the obviously up for the challenge, you're going to do it, but like is there are there any considerations there where you're like, "Oh, like, I don't know. How do you feel about that?"
well, I'm definitely nervous because I know that
Yeah.
I'll like, because with Weston, when he was little, I was able to like sit down and relax, and I'm not going to be able to do that with like
Yeah.
a little one. And if he's like latched to me, I'm still going to probably have to get up and like keep Weston from climbing on something, like hurting himself, because that's the stage he's in right now, is just like exploring, but like he has no self awareness. So,
Oh
um,
man.
I just think I'm going to be really, really tired for sure. I'm not sure. I can't remember if I'm like right now, if I'm just pregnancy tired, or if I'm tired because I have a toddler, or both. But it's like, how, like sometimes I'm like, how am I going to manage to and like stay sane and have the energy? Um, I think, yeah,
That that is gonna be so interesting. I have a friend here in town who just had her second baby, and she decided to take her first out of daycare because of financial reasons, and she's balancing both. And I'm like, how's it going? She's like, every day is different. And she's like, she's a super positive person, so she's
yeah,
like, like that's her way of saying it's crazy, but it is what it is. Like we're doing it. We're gonna make it work. But
yeah.
yeah, so when obviously you just moved. So when you were in Montana, did you have like weekly activities that you guys had, like where Tuesdays were like, whatever, music class or gymnastics or whatever? Did you have like stuff planned out like that?
Yeah. So like on Tuesday evenings, we did have gymnastics, and then so that was once a week. We had a nice play cafe. So when it's like right now in Montana, it's in the negatives. We just missed that, which is nice,
Mm,
because we left, but it's been like negative every single day temperatures, and
ugh.
so we would go to the play cafe. There was a children's museum, but
Mm.
it temporarily like closed just recently, but
Oh.
there was like all sorts of like different activities that we could do there. I went to my workout classes Tuesday, Wednesday, Fridays, and he just came along with me. So that was in our routine, even though that was for me.
Hmm.
He like would be the chill
That's
kid who
awesome.
sits in his stroller and he eats his snacks while like all the moms are working out. So that was fun. And then so like I feel like I had a nice routine and I was getting out of the house. And in the summer, we walked every single day. And then when it's
Nice.
now we'd go to the park because he's like, mobile now. But it's just like we had something, I felt like every day, especially in the summertime. And then I would get with other like stay at home moms at least maybe once a week or every other week and have a play date.
That's
But
what I was gonna say. So did you have like a daily set routine, like, okay, wake up, breakfast, and then we kick it into gear where we're like, all right, we're gonna, go to the park, then we're gonna come back for a nap, we're gonna eat lunch, we're gonna, like everything was set in routine? Or were you kind of like, we'll see how the day goes? Or do you think about it the night before? How do you decide what you're gonna do?
I feel more organized if I have a plan. It was nice when I had set things, because sometimes if I'm not, I feel like I'm like slow moving, and then all of a sudden it's 9 o'clock and we're still in our pajamas, like playing with toys. I do
Yeah.
try to, um, and I would say like there's some weeks I feel like I'm really on top of it, and then there's other weeks that I'm like not at all. But like, what I would try to do is when I got him up, I'd go ahead and change him into clothes, or after breakfast, I would change him right away. And then so then he's like in clothes and I'm dressed and we're ready to go do something. So that really helped if I was ready. Um, or awake at least an hour or 30 minutes before he is, because then there's some days where I'm really tired and I sleep until he wakes up. And then I feel really unorganized when I do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I did try to have a set schedule, but also flexible, I guess,
Yeah.
depending on how I feel. Yeah.
It's so interesting because, we only have the weekends to plan out with the girls, and I'm always like, and I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, okay, like this past weekend I was like, all right, we had a great time going to the pool on Saturday, so we're going to put that on our calendar for next Saturday, because I need it to like be planned and in the
Yeah.
calendar so that I can make sure that we're going to do those things, because I am the kind of person, like, I know how it goes with my family. If we're in the house for, let's say, 4 hours together, it starts to get really bad. Everybody starts to get really cranky. And I'm like, all right, so let's go to the pool Saturday mornings, and then Saturday afternoons, let's go to the grocery store for our Saturday dinner. But we're not going to buy any other dinners, because if we do that, then we can't go to the grocery store tomorrow. And Sam's Club on Sundays, and hopefully Sam's Club has samples that day, because that takes longer, and the girls love samples. Yeah, so I always wonder that if you're super like planned out like that, is that how, like, are you do you meal prep or meal plan in advance? Are you kind of like figure out what's happening that day?
Yeah, I kind of like figure it out that day. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I really want to be organized. That's like one of the things that if I had to work on myself, it needs to be like my organization, or like, because I have all these great ideas and then sometimes I don't commit. So I'm a procrastinator. Like the definition of procrastination, that's me.
Yeah.
So I do hate that. I used to like meal prep all the time, Ryan and I, but like having a kid, it's like so hard. So I did tell Ryan, I was like, once we get in our new home, like I really want to make sure that we have like really good set routines, and just like we're in a good routine. I want to wake up before Weston and our, son, and like exercise, because we do have a gym that goes in our garage, and like do something for me before they wake up, because I do feel so much better when I do that. Um, and then so I just I want to be better about that. And then like I want to be the mom who like cooks meals and then puts them in the freezer and then can just pop them out anytime. Like I
Same.
want to get to that level. I'm just like not there. Like I still am kind of, you know, in limbo. I don't know, like if that makes sense. So
Totally.
I'm not that picture perfect stay at home mom that you see on Instagram or like YouTube, like what we eat in a day, or like that's not me. I kind of figured it out. Though I did
That.
try this meal prep thing, like Hungry Root is what it's called. We did a
Mm,
subscription last week, and it
okay.
had some just like easy prep, like dinner meals in there that you just kind
Oh.
of throw together, and like you can put preferences in it, like do you want it to be organic, or are you allergic to something, or do you want to avoid seed oils, or what kind of diet are you on, all sorts of
Oh,
stuff, and
wow.
like sent really good meals. And Ryan and I like threw them together so easy, and I was like, I think I'm going to start doing this at least for dinners, maybe 3 or 4 times, because that makes my life easier. Like breakfast is
Yeah.
easy to figure out, lunch is easy to figure out. It's just like dinners, and Weston's ate a bunch of it. Like he really likes it. So I'm like, maybe we might start
Nice.
doing this. And you can do
That
breakfast and lunch
that's
on that
awesome.
too. But
Oh,
like
really?
yeah, so it's kind of cool. So that was Hungry Root, but I'm like, this could make my life a little bit easier. And it wasn't that like pricey either. It wasn't as more than I would spend at the grocery store. And we haven't really
Oh, that's
wasted anything.
great.
So that's nice.
That's where
So
I like I've said to Brandon is I want in a dream world we would have a personal chef, because
yeah.
I like cooking a lot, but coming up with things is the hardest part for me. Like I
Yeah.
struggle with that so much. Like I don't know what, like we will say something and I'm like, I need to start writing down like a list of all the different things that we've made, whether the girls have liked it or not, just to be able to go through it instead of like, oh man. And we go to the grocery store every day. Like I would say I would say 6 days a week. Probably we go to the store, because I don't buy far in advance, just to not, because I'm also one of those people that like I never know what I'm going to want that day. Like if we I don't want to plan out 7 days in advance, and like we get to Sunday and I'm like, oh, I don't want pasta today.
Yeah.
So I which brings up a great question. So Brandon told me the other day, he said, without like, obviously without like repercussions of like um being unhealthy, stuff like that. Do you think there's a food you could eat every single day for the rest of your life?
Oh, goodness. You know, Ryan has a good answer for this. I don't know if there's something I could eat every single day and not get sick of. Maybe like smoothies. I love smoothies. But
Oh
Ryan's
yeah.
answer is pizza because you have
Same
breakfast
with Brandon.
pizza. Yeah, because you
Yeah.
can like have dessert pizza and then you can have regular pizza. You got
Yeah.
macaroni pizza. So like you can really spice up a pizza however you want. So I'd
I
have to
couldn't do
probably,
it.
yeah, it's the crust for me. I'm like, I'd be tired of pizza.
Well, it's interesting because like there was a time when I was single and I would make like chicken and vegetables like every single day, or
Yeah.
chicken, quinoa, and vegetables. And I was like, oh, I could eat this for a long time. And then I'd get to like a lot, like probably like 3 weeks of doing it. And I'm like, all right, I'm tapped out. Like I can't do it anymore. Like I'll go, I could go 2 years of eating eggs every single day. And then I'm like, okay, I've got to take like at least like a 2 month break because I'm
Yeah.
just burnt out on it. Right. I just
Hmm.
think it's so interesting. I think it's so awesome that people meal prep and are so good about all of that. Like I've been trying to do better about not wasting food. So if we have chicken thighs, we have moved away from chicken breast because I can't stand the texture of it. It's just like I hate it. But anyway,
Yeah.
we will make a ton of them and then I'll be like, all right, what can we put that in? Today we're gonna do chicken and vegetables. Tomorrow, let's do chicken Caesar salad and like, try to like have the chicken, but also find meals to do it with. And I just find that
Yeah.
so, I just wish we could be so prepared. Cause the days when I pull things out of the freezer and like, this gave me so much time to do other things instead of like, oh, I'm cooking dinner again tonight.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
that. I think that's like I don't know, what's the word? Like usually, I think that's the worst part of my day is trying to figure out what's for dinner. Um,
Yeah.
so I think I get like anxiety over that if I don't have
Yeah.
it planned out. Or sometimes I know what I'm gonna cook, and then I get to that point and I'm like so tired,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I was in my first trimester. I'm officially in my second trimester as of
That's
yesterday. I
crazy.
know. But I was so tired. I'm like, Ryan, I need you to come home. Can you cook us something? But then he was busy at work and he'd get home late. So we were just like eating grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Yep.
So
Oh
we did
yeah.
that quite a bit
Yeah.
just because I was just too tired to cook. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's been an interesting thing. I know not to harp on food because we do that a lot, but it is interesting to see like trying to stay like on the healthier side, but every once in a while being like, all right, I just need a grilled cheese and tomato soup. Like it's just
Yeah.
gonna happen. It's so interesting to have those days and you're like, all right, it's okay. It's okay to
Yeah.
have those things, and then to do those things. It's
Yeah. And
so
Weston loves
interesting.
it, of course. But
Yes. Yeah.
um, yeah, even so I'm like strict on his snacks too. But I will say when we go to church on Sunday, we'll like, they give him animal crackers or like goldfish. And I could say no, but I know that will like keep him in the daycare area and
Yeah.
happy. I'm like, so that's
Yeah.
just his treat,
Yeah.
for him to be good. And it was funny because we're going to a different place here, obviously, because we're in a different town. And the workers said the same thing they did in Great Falls. They're like, he's just like so quiet and good. And he ate his snack and he just watches the other kids. I'm like, yeah, my kid's a people watcher. Just like me, I feel
Same.
like I'm watching everybody.
Oh, I love people watching. It's the
Yeah,
best.
he's the
So,
same. There, he's just eating his animal crackers, just watching the other kids.
so have you started looking into activities around you that you guys can go to and do?
Yeah, so there's really not a lot here, unfortunately. There's no
Okay.
play cafes or anything. They have gymnastics, but I feel like it's a little more geared to like just girls. I feel like
Oh, that's
maybe.
too
I mean,
bad.
I think it's probably not. It's for 18 months and older, but it just seems
Mm.
like I don't know. When I look at the website, if it's only just a bunch of girls and like no boys, I'm like, man. So I didn't do that, but I did sign him up for swimming lessons, but it's like a parent
Nice.
one. So we're going to
Yep.
either me or like Ryan will have to get in, but it's twice a week and it starts next month and it's for a month.
Oh, wow.
And I was surprised how cheap it was. It was like $30 for a whole month, 2 times a week.
Ooh,
I'm like,
that's great.
things were a lot cheaper here than this little small town. But
That's
um,
nice.
yeah, so we're gonna do that. But other than that, really nothing much. Next week we're going to Pennsylvania for Ryan's work, and I wasn't gonna go,
Okay.
but I realized how much kid stuff there is to do up there. So while he's at work,
Oh,
we could go to the zoo, we could go to the aquarium. There's a whole bunch of like different children museums and um, like so much to do. There's like a tree house, like an outdoor play
ooh,
area that has all these like cool wooden, I don't know, like structures
yeah,
for them to play on. So I was like, okay, maybe I will go. Cause I was like, what am I going to do? Sit in the hotel for 9 hours while you're at work? He's like, just
yeah.
drop me off and then figure it out. So I don't know. We
That's
might go to
awesome.
the zoo or something. Yeah. So I'm like,
That-
okay, Pennsylvania, I see you.
Yeah,
A
I
lot
think
more
that's
to do there.
interesting because you guys definitely, you're still deciding where you're gonna live eventually, and that is such a big important thing. Like we've been talking about that here because it's pretty limited here. Though, if we wanted to drive 2 hours to Phoenix, we have so much more at our fingertips, being able to go to the parks and the museums and the aquariums and the zoos and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And you're just like, man, I think if I lived down there and I were a stay-at-home mom, I would have a membership to everywhere. And then we would have like a rotation, right? Just to be able to like to keep busy, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's interesting. So as Weston gets older, do you foresee yourself like getting like some kind of curriculum rolling? Like do you think that your plan is to keep to homeschool as well?
I think so as of now, but like when we get there, I could just be like losing my mind and be like, no, you're going to school. But
Yeah.
I do feel like I want to homeschool. I have a few friends that do like different curriculums. I don't have like one in mind like
Sure.
as of now, but they really like it and it's easy. And even if you've never taught before, it some of these curriculums literally say to student or child like,
Oh, wow.
and so it kind of really kind of breaks it down for you, so you're not having to like lesson plan or anything,
Oh, that's cool.
which is nice. I think the most being a teacher though, you would want to be organized, maybe look like on Sunday on everything that you might teach and kind of go over so you're prepared. But other than that, I think they've got some really good curriculums out there. And then they also have conferences for homeschooling, so you can like go and like listen to other
Oh,
people and why they
cool.
homeschool. And then they have vendors there with like all sorts of curriculums that you can like get samples of to take home and kind of figure out like what you want to do. So
Wow.
I'm planning on going down that route, but we'll see. Because I'm nervous because again, I'm not like an English teacher. I'm really bad at math,
Sure.
which I used to be really good at it. But when if you don't use it, you lose it.
Hmm.
Um, but like I said, they do have like even um, stuff like on computers,
Yeah.
or sorry, like that you can use your laptop for. But I would
Yep.
want to do more like book study, and I also want to be somewhere where they have like good co-ops, where I could
Yeah.
meet like once or twice a week. Um, Usually they're at churches, not all of them, but sometimes you can find them elsewhere that aren't affiliated with like a religion or anything. But
Yeah.
a lot of times you do find them there, and then they could have PE and art and maybe like other things that you don't really get. So then they're also exposed to other children. And
Yeah.
then with homeschooling, I want to make sure that we live somewhere that there are a lot of activities to do, sports wise, or
Yeah.
if he wants to play an instrument, but a way to get him exposed to other people, like
Sure.
and kids, because like if you do homeschooling right, your kids should be like socialized a lot. Because I think that's the main concern for people. They're like, "Well, my kid's going to be socially awkward." I was like, "Okay, well, did you know socially awkward people in your public school?" I mean, yeah. So it's like
It's a
no
great
matter
point.
where, it's like as long as you're doing it right and you're socializing and getting out and meeting people and like um, having like those conversations, I don't know, and like being active, I think is important. So we can't live out in the middle of nowhere. I told Ryan, I was like, we
Yeah.
have to live close to civilization, or he's gonna be like that kid. Oh, what's that movie? We just watched it the other day where they go underground for 30 years and they come back
I
up.
don't know that. I don't know
Oh
that
my
one.
gosh, I have to ask Ryan. It's the guy, and I don't even know his name. It's the guy that who played in Tarzan.
Oh,
Oh,
was it Brendan Fraser?
yeah, so it's a Brandon
The Brendan
Fraser
Fraser
movie.
one? Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
remember what
so
it's called.
funny.
Yeah. But I do, you know what? I think that's a really interesting point because we have a babysitter that we use now, and she would technically be a senior in high school, but she's been homeschooled since, I think she said she was in first grade when they started it. And she has two older sisters and a younger sister, and they did homeschooling because they wanted to be able to travel.
Mhm.
So they went and lived in Costa Rica for like, I think she said like 6 months or something like that. And it wouldn't have been possible. But then when they got back, her parents were like, well, let's just keep going on this. And now she does it all online, like, but at this point, because she's in high school and like technology is fine and stuff like that. And she is like the most adult person I've ever met in my life. Like she can talk to anybody. She's super personable and super social. And I've met a few homeschool kids recently that I've been like, dang, those kids are adult and they're so smart, listening to them talk about things. And you're like, yeah, I mean, I think there's so much that I didn't realize was out there to help people that are homeschooling now. Like either teaching the parents to teach or teaching the kids themselves. And I think it's such an interesting and cool opportunity, really. Like I have a girlfriend whose son is really good gymnast, and they'd moved him to online schooling because his training is during the day, the better trainings during the day, and
Mhm.
that's the opportunity for him. And she's like, I love it because I have more time with him, and he has socialization because he's in gymnastics, and I think he's in fifth or sixth grade at this point. But yeah, like I think that's such an interesting decision to make, and I worry because I'm not the techiest or the not the smartest person there is. So I'm like, oh man, would I mess up my kids a ton if I ended up
Mm,
homeschooling them? But I do think there are so many resources to help
yeah.
with that now, which I think is
Y-
very cool.
Yeah, because that's one of my biggest fears too. And then something that you're not good in and they need help with, you can always like get tutors and stuff
Hmm.
as well. But no,
Yeah,
I agree. There's so much more for them to learn, and there's more flexibility too. So to like whatever they're
yeah,
interested in that time, you really get to like just kind of work on that and learn more about that. And I don't know. So it's just instead of school where it's standardized testing and they're teaching to a test, like I was in the school system. I
yeah,
mean, working there, but then even I just remember as a student, just I remember I've had teachers said, we really wish we could go more into this topic because it's one of my favorites, or we wish we could talk about
yeah,
this, but maybe if we have time at the end of the year, we'll do it. But we have to like, I need you to get ready for like to take this test. And then there's research, there's studies, data out there. That's the word I'm looking for, that show that homeschooled children or students out to test their peers that are in public school. And
I'll believe it.
I think like in public school, it takes them 8 hours to teach whatever it is that day when like really you only need a couple hours of homeschooling a day.
Yeah,
They only need that. I mean, especially because if it's one-on-one, it's just um, they're able to learn it
yeah,
faster, and then they're able to do things that they enjoy more. And then, like you said, more time with them, and then also, when they go to school, they like you lose that influence over them. So when we talk about cell phones and you
yeah,
know, they'll eventually obviously they got to be independent, go on their own, but you really really lose that like that influence. They get that peer influence more.
yeah,
And just thinking about me as like a middle schooler and a teenager, I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. Like parents don't
yeah.
know what they're talking about. Like, you know, probably did some questionable things in high
Oh
school.
yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting. Like we've talked, with Ryan and Michelle and some of the other people recently, and we're like, what if we got a teacher for like our group of kids? and they just like taught them, and did it that way, like basically have our own little schooling kind of thing. Because yeah, it's really interesting too, like living in this town, and we've said it before, but the public middle schools here are very poorly ranked, like very, very poorly. And it's, it's so interesting talking to people who have their kids there, and they're like, well, I mean, every middle school has their challenges. And I'm like, yeah, but like pulling knives on kids, that's not really the challenges that I had in middle school. Like I was awkward
Oh,
and didn't like my school, but that certainly wasn't something we were battling at my school, right? But
yeah.
yeah, it's such an interesting thing to think about and to discuss, of like, okay, so what do you do? What do you do when your kid gets to that range? And I do think, the freedom of having a, the curriculum set the way you want it to be, because you can take them out of school because there is no school, right? But like,
Mhm.
I was teaching golf during COVID, and there was a kid who his dad pulled him out of school because the online schooling was not working for him. Like it just like they would have all the kids on Zoom together, and then they were trying to teach him, and he couldn't keep his focus, and he was miserable. And so the dad was like, all right, I'm pulling you out. And they would do like 2 hours of mountain biking a day, and then they would come and they would sit down and they would go over like, whatever subjects he had to go over. And then they would go out and then they'd go on a hike after they got that 2 hours, and then they would come back. And that was the way that it worked for him. And I was like, that freedom is really cool. Like
Yeah.
I think about when I worked in the golf world, I never had weekends off. Like I'd have a Monday off or Tuesday, Wednesday off. And it was awesome because I would go into the stores and nobody would be in there because everybody had the normal, 9 to 5 and had weekends off. And I think about that in the sense, like if my kids got into mountain biking or skiing, and those were their activities that they were really into, how cool would it be to be on the trails when nobody else is there because their
Oh,
school
yeah.
was flexible that way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That'd
I
be
definitely
awesome.
think there's a lot of
Yeah.
positives to it for sure.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing is if you're learning something and like, I don't know, you can take a field trip like, okay, well, we're going to go to this museum or let's go to this farm and figure out like, I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much potential. Like you don't have to like stay in the four walls. You can like go out and explore the world. So I think that's like the cool part about it. So I am excited about that. But again, I need to get together with the organization. So I can
Yeah.
just make sure that we have a good routine. Once you're in a routine, it's fine. But I think the reason I feel so disorganized now is because like I'm living at my parents for a couple months and it's just, you know, not our normal routine. So we're just kind of like, I feel like we're floating. We're like real flexible. The other day, we're like, okay, well, let's just go to the park and let's go walk the trail. But it's been snowy and icy the last few days, so we're just stuck. One
Mm.
more thing about homeschooling, though, I did read that Harvard and like all these other Ivy League schools, they're seeking out homeschoolers before they're like peers of like public school kids, just because they do score higher, and a lot of those kids have entre- entrepreneurship like experience too. Because I mean, I know a lot of like homeschool of the podcasts that I've listened to, like their kids like starting a business or learning about like how to be an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur and like doing all sorts of stuff. So I thought that was interesting. The one person who was talking about it, her son actually edited her podcast and like did the media for it.
That's
And so that was,
cool.
yeah. And he was like a teenager. And so that was his job, you know. So he's learning how to be like a media producer or whatever you would call that. But
That's interesting. That's a very
yeah,
interesting point. I just love podcasts, and I love listening to podcasts and learning from so much. And I've started doing, I keep calling them books on tape, audiobooks, showing my age. But it's crazy how much knowledge is out there and how much easier it would be to homeschool for us than it would have been for our parents, who would have had to get a book from the library, or buy a book
yeah,
from who knows where, the bookstore, about this. And I just like, at your fingertips, there's just so much, and there are curriculums, so it's not like you're like willy-nilly like, oh, I guess let's learn about the moon today, or whatever it is. So
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I
So
think
we'll see.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. I'm excited to kind of see where it progresses and how it goes. And like, I'm always fascinated too when you have kids of different ages and kind of how it goes, right? Like Hannah's or both of the girls are in the Montessori system. Aubrey actually just moved up to the toddler room. So now she's with kids all the way up to 3, and she's not even a year and a half yet. And I'm like, that's such a big
Yeah.
leap in age, right? Like Hannah just turned 3. And what Hannah's doing is incredible because she's with kids up to 6, and she's coming home and she's trying to write. Like, obviously she can't really write, but she's trying, and they're trying to teach her how to circle things and like the motor skills of that. And I'm like, and my mom's like, already? She's already learning that? I'm like, it's really kind of cool to think about even homeschooling and Weston being able to teach his younger brother things because it's just the two of them learning together. Like, that is something that I really love about Montessori and the way that they have like the older kids teaching the younger kids, which is a great learning lesson for those older kids. But then for the younger kids to learn from the older kids rather than just a teacher standing in the front of the class and teaching that way,
Yeah.
it's a really cool system. I think it has, some hints of homeschooling to it a little bit,
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I'm so interested to see, obviously as you have your second baby, and I'm excited.
I'm just like nervous, just trying to figure out how to have 2 and then like Weston not to be jealous and him to love his brother. And right now he's in a hitting stage. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
so, like
We went
he
through all
was,
of that while I was pregnant too.
yeah.
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 They
Well,
figure it out.
yeah. Hopefully I'll figure it out too.
You will. And we're
Yeah.
actually at the point now where it's flipped, and Aubrey tries to beat up Hannah every single day.
Oh
Her
no.
favorite thing to do is to walk up to Hannah and just try to pull her hair as hard as she can and scream as loud as
Yeah.
she can. And we're like, what? Like, what are you doing? Why are you picking on her? You're such a second born.
That
Just
seems
trying
about
to
right.
antagonize.
Yeah, my sister and I are 8 years apart, and I feel like she did that
Wow.
to me. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I remember my cousin, my 2 cousins, they were brother and sister. They were like 3, 2, kind of around that age, anywhere it's like between 2 and 4. And they would like tackle me. Like one would grab my feet and then I'm falling. And then one's like jumping on me and the other one's pulling my hair. I have 3 little toddlers on me. And I'd go like tell my mom. And my mom's like, you're big enough, figure it out. I'm like, but they're literally like just coming out and
Mm-hmm.
attacking me. I can't like fight back. They're little and I'm 10, I don't know, like
Yep.
11. It was so they're mean little
That's funny. And
toddlers.
it's interesting because it's weird how many people we know that have the same sex siblings. So like a lot of people we know here like have 2 boys or 2 girls, but it's fun to see like the ages when they're like certain ages together and they're brothers and they're like the cutest together and they
Yeah.
care about each other so much and you're like, oh, that is adorable. And
Yeah.
your Bryce and Ryan's relationship seems awesome, and for them to have brothers that are tight like that, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hopefully that
I
works
really
out
hope
that way.
so. It wasn't
Yeah.
always like that, by the way, because Bryce has told us a story where Ryan made him eat pennies off the floor. So I have a lot coming for me.
You do.
Like
Boys.
Weston is already apparently like a spitting image and like acts just like Ryan did when he was younger.
Oh my
Just very,
gosh.
he's definitely mischievous, and I don't know if it's
Yeah.
probably a toddler thing. I hope, but he's
Yeah.
just like the more you say don't do that or like hey let's
Oh
you try
yeah.
to redirect him, it's like no, then he'll do it more. And so right
Yep.
now he's like antagonizing the dogs. And so I'm trying to figure out that like he'll like love him and pet him and then but if he's in a mood he'll go and like just smack him. I'm like, what are
Yep.
you doing? And he
Yeah.
loves chasing my little dog around because he has a reaction. He growls and he thinks it's funny. But he's only this dog's 7 pounds with no teeth. So he's not very threatening. So it's just like he'll chase him around. And then I mean, I can only say no so many times. And my mom's like, you need to do something. I'm like, I don't know what to do. We have to put Chewy in a different room.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm a little stressed. I'm a little tired. But yeah, I don't know where that comes from. Like usually, like he was so happy to see my mom, which is his Gigi, but she'd been gone all day, and he was like Gigi, and so excited. And then he would like realize that she'd been gone all day and was mad and like smacked her. And I don't know where he's
Oh,
getting that from because like we don't smack each other and
right.
we don't spank or anything like of that. So he's just like an aggressive little toddler. Please
Yeah,
tell me that's normal.
it is normal. It's
Yeah.
so normal. That's the hardest part is like, how do I redirect this behavior? But it's normal
Right.
for them to do. Like I said something about how I was worried about Aubrey moving up to toddler class because she is just smacking everybody and doing all that. And one of my friends has their kid in the same class, and she's like, "Oh yeah, get used to it. That's all they do in that class. You get reports every day of like your kid bit somebody, your kid smacked somebody, your kid did this, your kid did that." I'm like, "Oh well, thank goodness because."
Yeah.
I don't want to get her kicked out of school. But same thing, we don't do that with her, so I'm not really sure like how they learn that stuff, right? Like they
Right.
don't know how
I
to
don't know.
communicate, so instead of communicating, that's how they communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. I did listen to something the other day. Like obviously their brains aren't developed, and we know that they're not developed until 25, but that decision mechanism or the understanding isn't there. So it's just like that's why they're so impulsive with their actions because they just don't know how to cope with, or like cope or to properly handle something. So they have those outbursts, which makes
Yeah.
me feel a little better. So,
No, totally.
but yeah,
Yeah, totally. It's
yeah.
challenging. I mean, it's challenging. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
well, I again will have to check back in about this. And I was just talking to my cousin tonight, and I was like, "Hey, you want to come on the podcast?" Because she's debating between having more kids or just stay at one. And she's on a Facebook group about one and done, I think is the name of the Facebook group. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I would be fascinated to know like the thinking behind that as well. She's a full time working mom, but um, like all of those different scenarios. And I'd like to have my friend on that decided to put her son who's in 5th grade into homeschooling to let him develop his gymnastics and his interest in gymnastics. Because I think that would be an interesting thing to do too, because her daughter is in school while her son stays at home. And I'd be interested to see how her daughter feels about her son being able to stay at home, but she doesn't. So yeah. So I think the more we can talk to people, it'll be interesting to hear their point of view, and maybe learning points for you as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Never know.
Yeah, like I'm
Yeah.
always wanting to learn and know more. And then also I need to like get with you and Michelle to talk about like
Oh
having two
yes.
under three. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
because that's
I'm
just yeah,
I'm
wild
excited
to
to
me.
hear that because we had her on the podcast to talk to her about having two kids and what the adjustment was like. And I'd be interested to hear, like, to listen back to what we said to her and then to hear what she says to you.
Yeah.
Like of what has worked well for her, and you know how
What
different
to
their two kids are.
expect.
Like our kids are so different. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure. And then yeah, it's all going to be different because she has a girl and a boy, and you have two girls, and then I'm about to have two boys. And I will say,
we've got it
boys
all
are,
covered.
yeah, I know. Boys are wild. They're feral. It's so funny. But
Yep.
because like when I'm with my friends who have girls, and they're so like calm, they can color. They're just more. I don't know. Weston, I
Not
can't get
tearing
him to
things
sit
up.
down and draw on anything. Like he doesn't want to scribble. No, he wants to like take things apart, put them back together, or break things, or like. But he likes
Yep.
to figure out how things work, so that's cool. Which I do
That's
think that's
cool.
yeah. So I think he's more interested in that. Maybe he'll be more not maybe not creative as in like artsy,
Engineering
but
minded, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll see. It'll be cool to see
Very
how
cool.
what interest he takes when he gets older. He loves trucks and trash trucks, and that's
Yeah.
where he's at right now.
That's what I keep saying to Brandon. Like, I don't want to rush this because I enjoy where we're at with our girls, but I'm
Yeah,
excited to see how they develop and what they get interested in and, where they go in life. Cause I think it'll be so interesting to say, like, oh, yeah, I could tell that when you were little, you loved to do this, that, and the other thing. Whereas,
yeah,
yeah, but yeah,
cool.
cool. Well, this was a good chat. Anything else
Yeah.
you have to say to wrap up the stay-at-home mom life?
I wouldn't change it for the world. I know there's days that
Awesome.
it's like really hard and I'm in the thick of it. And if you are a stay-at-home mom and you do have those thoughts that like, man, what am I doing? Maybe I should go back to work. Like, I feel like a failure. Like, I have those thoughts all the time, but it's completely normal. You know, it's literally we are 24/7 with our kids and we don't, get a break. Hopefully you do have a partner that kind of helps when they do come home to like alleviate some of that stuff or pick up where, you left off. And so, but just hang in there, mama, you got it. So that's all I got to say. That's what I would want to say to myself when I'm having those tough days.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's such a positive message and so awesome. So yeah, so
Yeah.
hang in there. You need support. Danielle's here for you.
Yeah, you got this.
Yes.
Yeah, because some days I'm like,
I give
what
you
am
guys
I
all
doing?
the credit. Yeah, I give you guys all the credit in the world for being able to do it, because even on weekends, like we get to Sunday afternoon and we're like, yes, they go back to school tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or like we have spring break and it's a whole week off and we're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So
yeah. I almost feel
really
a little
awesome.
bad. So Ryan has been off for 2 weeks because he's retired and he's starting a skill bridge next week. And so I've really taken a back seat. I've been reading my book. I'll be sitting in my chair and he's like playing with them. And I feel really bad, but I know you're about to go back to like a 9 to 5 kind of job.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be me again. So I was like, I'm just soaking this up.
Yep.
He's like, I get it. But I was like, but seriously though, like if you need me to do something, I'll definitely help. But I will say Ryan's been awesome about that. When he does come home and on the weekends, he really does, take more of the responsibility.
That's
and so
awesome.
I'm able to like sit back, or he's like, you can go read if you want, but I like spending time with him. He's like, you don't have to do that time because you've been with him all day. I'm like, I know, but like, I don't want to miss out like this family interaction. But there are some times I will like, there's a lot of times I don't do that. He does bath and usually bedtime. But that's because he doesn't see him all day. And so that's his time.
Yeah.
And it's my time to just chill for a second. But I do hope that for everyone out there that is a stay-at-home parent, that you do have that support from your significant other, that you're able to get some of those built-in breaks, even though you're not going anywhere, but still self-care is important.
It is so important. Yeah. I agree. Well, this was awesome.
Yeah.
Nice chatting with you.
I know.
All right. Well, we will see you all next week.
Yes. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
And that wraps up another episode of Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. Thank you again so much for listening to us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider giving us 5 stars so other mothers out there like you can find us and listen. If you would like, you could follow us on any of our socials at Mom Jeans the podcast. If you have questions, would like to send us your birth story, or give us suggestions or things that you would like to hear, please email us at hello@momjeansthepodcast.com. See you next week.